probably the one thing we didn't say is, how do you find that balance of indoor time? And so, if we talk about myopia, you want sort of more than 2 hours a day outdoors, obviously being sun safe. But if you are indoors for several hours because it's either too hot, or in Australia we end up getting summer storms and you're inside, then you want to kind of go, 30 to 40 minutes max before they take a decent 5-10 minute break, get up and move around. So, it's hard to give you a maximum time to be doing those things, but screens I would limit to probably 90 minutes maximum, and encourage those other activities, but during those 90 minutes that you're kind of breaking it up into 2 or 3 sessions.
For most Australians, summer holidays can look a little different from our regular schedules. Long days, strong sun, plenty of time at the beach, in the pool, or moving between indoor and outdoor spaces to escape the heat. At the same time, routines relax, and for many families, that means kids naturally spending a bit more time on screens as well. Over a long break, that small day-to-day shift in habits can have an influence on a child's eyes and overall vision. Today, I'm joined again by Paul Graham from Harmony Vision Care to talk through practical, realistic ways Gold Coast families can support their children's vision over the summer holidays without overthinking it. So, hi, Paul. Good to speak with you again.
Likewise. Hey, Paul.
So it's December, so now's a good time to discuss what the summer sun and summer holidays means for family vision care, and not just in terms of UV protection either. There's probably a lot of other aspects to it that we can talk about. So Paul, so summer holidays on the Gold Coast bring a big change of pace and routine for a lot of us. So from an eye care perspective, why should families pay attention to their activities at this time of year?
Yeah, look, I mean, and there are benefits and risks to both if we just break it loosely into indoor time and outdoor time, and so and kids' eyes are sort of still developing, and so the amount of volume of time or intensity of time that they're doing anything can have a sort of a bigger impact than what it has on adults, and so the environments that the kids are finding themselves in and how they're using their eyes can have a big impact. And we certainly see that in other countries where, the opposite occurs, that people spend a lot of time indoors in winter because it's so cold, and we end up getting spikes and things like myopia. And it's the indoor time's the key part here, where the same thing may well happen here as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess up here in Queensland, it's maybe it's perhaps a bigger factor than down south, where the summers are perhaps aren't as humid, for one thing.
For one thing, exactly, yeah, and the outdoor time is excellent for getting that break away from those myopia causing and eye strain causing kind of activities. But then we need to kind of balance that with UV protection. I mean, down this part of the world, we've got thinner ozone, and a 26-degree overcast day here has a threefold level of UV compared to a sunny day in Europe.
All right. Well, I'm gonna give you the magic wand here. So, in an ideal world, if you had to describe what a vision-friendly summer day looks like for a Gold Coast child, what would be in that day?
It would be getting out outdoors, preferably in the morning. Making sure that you are wearing the appropriate protection. We can probably talk about that in a moment. But getting some outdoor exposure when the UV hasn't quite crept up yet. So that'll be in the morning or late afternoon. And then getting quite a few hours of outdoor time is ideal, and there's lots of benefits to outdoor times in terms of just the wide open spaces, green time, no walls, all of those sorts of things, and movement and play and those sorts of things. And then if you are spending some time indoors, then it's ideal that you're mindful of how much time is being spent on a device in one kind of hit. And so an ideal day would be breaking those things up. So, mornings outside, afternoons outside, and then if you're escaping the heat during the day inside, that you're breaking up those screen times and taking sort of decent breaks where you're getting up and moving around.
Okay. Well, let's unpack part of that answer a little bit. So you talked about free play time outdoors. So why is that so important for children's vision development?
Free plays has been long shown to be great for kids' overall cognitive development. And if we look at vision being a massive part of our intelligence and how we think and all of those sorts of things. So imaginative play where the kids are either discussing the rules, arguing the rules, making up the rules amongst themselves is not only good for that social and communication aspect, it's really emphasizing visual thinking skills and imagination and those sorts of things. And then you've just got the physical component of running around and being active. And that's what our visual systems are designed to do. Learning where our bodies are in space, where our bodies are relative to everything else, and being able to coordinate those movements.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the social aspect to it is maybe something that we overlook a little bit. But I remember like last year, and my daughter started a new school, and I would talk to her about what she did during her lunch break, and it was fascinating to hear about some of the the new games that she was learning from other kids, and the games that she was teaching them. So certainly there's a lot of that interaction aspect that is important, isn't it?
Absolutely, and and we look at vision being sort of part of everything. So good general development usually means good visual development.
Okay, what about balance and coordination? How important are those activities also?
Yeah, look, those sorts of things, particularly for young kids, are really the foundation of then being able to learn how to hold yourself still in a classroom, paying attention. It's a good foundation for future fine motor skills. We typically look at the way, if you look at normal baby development, their movements are quite clumsy and gross, and as they get more and more sophisticated, then the actual ability to make finer and finer movements get better. And one of the finest motor movements you can do is an eye movement. So, our ability to move our eyes free or with our body is really dependent on good overall development in terms of balance and coordination and understanding how things change as we move through space.
Mm. And like hand-eye coordination, like throwing, catching balls, tracking balls. A lot of those skills, I guess, are kind of developed early on in a child's development cycle.
Well, they're always developing, but the earlier you start, the better, the more sophisticated they come. And, they're all part of that global learning how to attend, learning how to concentrate, and then, like I said, earlier, we're getting finer and finer abilities is important. I mean, we don't talk about handwriting as much anymore, but I think that's going to be, we're going to lose some things from not practicing those finer eye-hand coordination skills in terms of cognitive development. Our brains learn through moving and actually in touching and interacting with the world under the guidance of vision. So all of those things are vitally important to our overall development over time. And the earlier you can start, the better.
Yeah, and I think you and I are Gen Xers, so you probably remember growing up that we spent a lot of our time outdoors and climbing stuff, and probably doing things that parents would roll their eyes at today. Do you think that maybe parents do need to take the guardrails off a little bit with kids and let them do things like climbing and get it and just free reign a bit more?
Yeah, look, and I can understand the concern of kids getting injuries and all the rest of it, and we're so sort of conscious around concussion and those sorts of things nowadays. But there is a one of my mentors used to call it crashing into the world with your senses. Our brains are basically geared up for trying to predict what's going to happen in the next moment in the world, and the only way that you can kind of make those predictions is have great experience, and great experiences moving and climbing and doing all of those sorts of things.
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, so we talked about the sun and with our climate, so sun exposure is a constant on the Gold Coast. What should parents understand about UV and their children's eyes?
That a good deal, like the majority, it's sort of estimated in depending which articles you look at, anywhere between from before you're 12 to before you're 18. But either way, they sort of estimate that the majority of your lifetime of UV exposure to your eyes is in those early years as a youth. And you've got less brow coverage. The tissue is sort of more ready to absorb UV. And so you've got that cumulative sort of impact of UV exposure over time. One argument is kids are looking up more, so therefore, you know, you've got more sort of direct sunlight into the visual system. And then if you couple that with activities around surfaces that reflect, so, you know, in Queensland where I am, it's, you know, I think it's something like 20%, 20 to 25% extra UV reflecting off the sand, similar off the water. And if you're in alpine environments, you've got the same thing coming off snow. So you're kind of getting a double dose. And both alpine environments and the Australian environment, we've got less atmosphere to absorb those UVs. The UV index is a lot higher. And like, as I said earlier, you know, where I live, that you can get burnt quite easily on a low to mid 20s overcast day. So, you know, we can't be too cautious about the impact of UV on a developing visual system.
And even in urban environments, there's a lot of reflection from concrete and ground surfaces, isn't there? Like, you know, at schools, you know, I'm thinking about all the time that, you know, we spent on those hot parade grounds. There must have been a lot of like UV reflection there as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you can see that sort of shimmer on the road, and you put your polarized sunglasses on and it disappears. It shows that, you know, these hard surfaces reflect things.
Yeah. So I think a lot of UV protection is, you know, it's almost mandatory in educational environments now. But so you would remind parents of what things like hats, sunglasses for kids, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with sunglasses, you want to make sure, in Australia we have these standards, and so you want a category 3 or category 4 rated sunglass, so that they have to meet some sort of standards for minimum standards for UV protection. Less than that, you can't be guaranteed that you're getting appropriate UV protection that falls into kind of the fashion sunglass kind of range. Category 4 is more, they're very dark, and so if you're doing alpine, or if you really want to apply some extra protection, category 4 goes above and beyond. You're just not allowed to drive in category 4, which we're assuming is probably not an issue for most kids. Right. But let's not get into the e-bike debate either, then, which is a big thing in Australia at the moment. So you want them to fit properly. So, you know, my son's going through a great deal of growth, and, you know, it all starts to add up if you're having to continually buy clothes. So you tend to buy clothes that they get to grow into. We don't recommend that for sunglasses. You know, they're cost effective enough now to get, you know, a reasonable pair of sunglasses and update them in terms of size. So get them to fit properly at the time, not for them to grow into. And making sure that they fit and they wrap, so there's no gaps for stray UV to get around the sides. And then if you add a hat to that, then you're getting a great deal of UV protection to the eyes between hat and sunglasses. And if kids are wearing prescription glasses, adding a hat to that is they're still going to get some UV protection, because most plastic lenses today are going to absorb some of the UV. Obviously, if they've got a pair of prescription sunglasses, it's going to take it to a next level. But I think people don't realise how much a hat actually helps eyes. It's not just keeping the sun off your scone, which of course I have to pay particular attention to, but you know, it's a big one for the eyes as well.
And you're too modest to say this, so I'm going to mention it for you, that Harmony Vision Care does have a wide selection of children's glasses and sunglasses. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah, we look at 50 to 70% of the patients we see are teenagers and younger, and so naturally we have eyewear to kind of match those people, including sunglasses, kids in particular, young kids in particular.
Okay. Well, before we get off eye safety, I also want to mention that I guess a lot of older kids and teens are also wearing contact lenses now. So there are particular concerns that we have to have around contact lens use and contact lens care, aren't there? Particularly with water.
Absolutely. And that's the tricky part with contact lenses, because contact lenses really might give you a lot of freedom for doing physical activities, and so naturally people are potentially going to be you know, wearing contact lenses in water environments. And so the blunt assessment is, if you don't need to, don't, because of just the contact lenses kind of attract bacteria and they stick to the eye, and if you're wearing these lenses all day, then there's an increased opportunity for eye infections. And, you know, while we might say the majority of eye infections might be minor, there can be a couple of more sort of serious ones that we need to consider. So The first point of sort of advice is don't. If you're in a situation where it's unavoidable, then you need to wear goggles, dispose of the contact lenses afterwards, or if you're wearing a reusable lens, that you're taking them out and giving it a good clean and soak after that particular water activity.
Yeah. Besides which, things like chlorine can have like a damaging effect on the integrity of the contact lenses, can't it?
Look, I've seen more issues with chlorine in eyes than I have with the contact lens
Okay.
itself. I mean, I guess the risk is that if you've got a highly chlorinated pool, I mean, we don't get it as much with the change in the way people sort of sterilize their pools and keep them sort of safer. The chlorine levels aren't nearly as high as they were 20 years ago. The kids used to come in the front of their eyes used to look like orange peel because of these effectively mild chemical burns from chlorine, and a contact lens will tend to hang on to those chemicals, and so it's not just whether there's damage to the contact lens, and a lot of people are wearing single-use lenses nowadays, so that's probably less of an issue. If you're wearing a fortnightly or a monthly lens, that might be a genuine concern, but it's also the fact that the contact lens is going to absorb the chlorine and then keep releasing it over the day, so you've got this a sort of continual after effect afterwards, clinging
All
onto
right.
those chemicals.
Well, just a reminder, if you're watching this on YouTube and you're getting value from the conversation, please hit the like button. It really helps other families to find this practical eye health advice. And also feel free to share with others if you are getting value from it. All right, Paul. Well, given the outdoor heat in Queensland, and like you said, it's just an inevitable part of the day that we have to spend some time indoors. So, as an eye care professional, what kinds of indoor activities would you encourage for kids that aren't screen based?
The classic board game, whether your chosen thing be Monopoly or Scrabble and all of those sorts of things. Again, there's nothing like a good argument over the rules and who did what to improve your communication and negotiation skills. Drawing, building, stuff where you're kind of having to use your hands and having to use your imagination. The problem with screens is that they're quite passive. They capture your attention. They don't develop attention. They capture your attention. And if we think on a really basic level, a game or an app has a certain, as much as they're getting much more sophisticated, they set the path, they set the visual world that you're kind of going to inhabit while you're using it. You're not creating that visualization yourself. So, reading a book and creating the imagery yourself is a much better thing for cognitive development than kind of being passively fed it, even if you're interacting with a game. I mean, there are some things with, some of the games where they improve contrast, your ability to see contrast and things like that. But if we're talking overall just good cognitive development, then it's again like that outdoor play, but done indoors where, group play, interactions, those sorts of things. But if you're doing stuff solo, stuff with your hands, crafts, drawing, building, all of those sorts of things are much better. You're talking about working in 3 dimensions. Yes, you could go really intense and then create some eye strain by doing a really intense kind of craft and things like that. But it's not the same kind of eye strain that you get from staring at a 2-dimensional screen for hours on end. And that's the challenging part with screens, is they just capture attention so much that you don't realize that the time's sort of gone away. That I've often said that, it's quite frightening to hear young people talk about where did the time go, because again, the Gen X thing, growing up, time seemed to drag on forever when you are, particularly if you had to wait that hour before you were allowed to get in the pool. It seemed to drag on a long time, but kids seem to be losing so much time now. And I think it's just the screen captures their attention and they lose touch with the sort of reality to a certain degree.
So so creativity, planning. You mentioned the social interaction aspect
Absolutely.
of it. I guess another thing for the summer holidays is that during regular school time, kids are often forced to read stuff that they probably wouldn't choose to read by choice. So maybe summer holidays are a time when you could encourage kids to do some selected reading for enjoyment, read things that are actually of
Absolutely.
interest to them.
And that can come in a couple of different levels. So, reading development is you can't understand what you don't already know about. So being read to from your parents helps you experience stories that you may not be ready to read yourself. It allows you to discuss concepts and words and discover language that we don't use in everyday speech. And so it broadens your language capacity and allows you to then be able to recognize those words when you eventually are able to read them yourself later on. So, and that's a critical part. And then, and as you said too, being able to choose what you read is really important because it means that you can read to your own interests, you can read at your own level, and you don't have the time pressure. You can read at your own pace. And I think that's a really important opportunity that we sometimes forget about is that, if we make reading a chore, kids are naturally going to avoid doing it. So if we can find ways of making reading enjoyable by taking the pressure off and just allowing some sort of choice, then that's a great thing for developing reading over time.
Okay. So over summer holidays, screen time inevitably tends to increase, despite
Absolutely.
our best intentions. Are there any signs that you can tell parents to watch for that would suggest maybe that screen use has tipped from being okay to too much?
Yeah, and look, you've got the classic sort of red or glassy looking eyes that come from not blinking enough while staring at a screen. If we're ever sort of seeing kids at the end of the holidays and we want to have a look at the front of their eye under magnification, we can sometimes see that their eyes are actually quite dried out because of the lack of blinking or the lack of proper blinking while we're doing those sorts of things. You can escalate into more obvious signs like squinting or eye rubbing, and it may not actually happen during the activity because if they're so intent on the game, two hands on a controller, there you may not sort of see that sort of behaviour. It might be once they're done and no longer on it. And we often see headaches at the end of the day where it's like, oh, it's been a hot day, you haven't drunk enough water. Well, the headache may actually be from an eye strain headache from the amount of gaming or device use that they've been doing. So they're probably the obvious ones where it's the physical act of, rubbing eyes, squinting, those sorts of things. Holding your head at a funny angle, but the other ones to watch out for are the headaches.
I think when a lot of parents consider screen use, one of the concerns they might have is blue light, the effect of blue light from screens. So, from your clinical experience, like what is the truth about blue light and how much does it really matter for kids' eyes?
Yeah, look, I think it has been a little exaggerated, the whole blue light story. And so, yes, we need to be careful about blue light exposure because you're getting close to that kind of UV end. But I think that for me, the bigger concern around blue light exposure is just what it does to sleep patterns. And so, if it's something you're concerned about, then most devices and monitors nowadays, depending on how old they are, allow you to screen blue light out of the equation. And one of the well, it sounds easy, but I'll say one of the simplest bits of advice is stop using your device a good hour and a half before bed to have a less impact on your sleep later on.
With some devices, I know with iPhones and Apple devices, you can actually set up like times when basically the children can't access those devices. I'm not sure about other brands.
Yeah, and look, it's all about balance in the end. And
yep,
I think we discussed earlier that the whole social media thing. Despite the rules changing in Australia around social media use, it's really just the time you spend on the device, regardless of what it is. And there's plenty of ways that you can lose time on a device through apps and streaming and whatever else, regardless of social media stuff.
Yeah. And before you know it, it's 3 a.m.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, I think we might wrap up there. So, Paul, thanks for a great, balanced, and practical perspective for all of us, especially Gold Coast families.
Just wanted to add in, probably the one thing we didn't say is, how do you find that balance of indoor time? And so, if we talk about myopia, you want sort of more than 2 hours a day outdoors, obviously being sun safe. But if you are indoors for several hours because it's either too hot or in Australia we end up getting summer storms and you're inside, then you want to kind of go, 30 to 40 minutes max before they take a decent 5-10 minute break, get up and move around. So, it's hard to give you a maximum time to be doing those things, but screens I would limit to probably 90 minutes maximum and encourage those other activities. But during those 90 minutes that you're kind of breaking it up into 2 or 3 sessions. This is the only thing I wanted to add. So,
All right, excellent. Thanks for that. Well, so for parents who would like to have a personalized consultation about their child's vision, whether during the holidays or ahead of the new school year, how can they get in touch with you at Harmony Vision Care?
Probably the easiest way at the moment is go to our website, so harmonyvisioncare.com.au, and you select contact us. There's plenty of book appointment buttons on the page, so that's a quick and easy way of seeing our availability and being able to book in. Otherwise, giving us a call directly on 0755205900 is the other way to get in touch.
All right. And once again, a reminder that if you've got value from this, then please hit the like button, subscribe to Paul's YouTube channel, and you can also follow Harmony Vision Care on Facebook and Instagram for updates about what's happening in the clinic. All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Excellent. Thanks.
All right.